plans to, quote, run out the clock, largely ignoring these controversies until the voters go to the polls. But our next guest has other plans. He says his website, WikiLeaks, is set to publish information that will not be helpful to Mrs. Clinton, and it may force her to respond. Moments ago, we had a lengthy and fascinating conversation with Julian Assange, co-founder and editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. He only agreed to speak to us from an undisclosed location, since he is currently wanted for extradition by Sweden, and he's under investigation by the U.S. government, too, for his role in the largest leak of classified documents in U.S. history. Here is part one of that exclusive interview. Watch. Julian, thank you very much for being here. So let's start with the additional information you have regarding Hillary Clinton. When can we expect this information?
While we're working around the clock, we have received quite a lot of material, stimulated, of course, by the US election process and by our major DNC revelation, which has now led to the resignation of 5 top officials in the DNC, including Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the president, the last one late last week. So, you know, it's a complex business, what we do. We have to assess the veracity. We have a perfect 10-year record so far in never getting it wrong. We want to keep that reputation, understand how things should be formatted, what media we should be involved in, what is the best way to stage it out. Do we accumulate everything, assess it, publish it all in one batch, or do we do several batches? The approach that we've decided to take is that we do several batches.
But what, I mean, give us a general sense. I mean, are we going to see it before the November 8th election?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the case of the DNC leaks, for example, we pushed as fast as we could to try and get it in before the Democratic nomination conference, because obviously people have a right to understand who it is that they're nominating and what sort of process was involved. And the same is true here for the US electoral process. People involved in that election have the right to understand who it is they're electing.
Now, you've seen it, right? Can you tell us how significant you believe it is? I mean, compare its significance to what we saw released by WikiLeaks in July.
Well, I don't want to scoop ourselves. We have a lot of pages of material, thousands of pages of material. So no, I have not read every single page. We're hard at work in doing that, trying to understand, etc. I don't want to give the game away, but it's a variety of different types of documents from different types of institutions that are associated with the election campaign. Some quite unexpected angles that are quite interesting, some even entertaining.
Do you know, right now, according to the average of all polls, she's beating Donald Trump by 5.5 points nationwide. She's way ahead of him in most of the swing states, not all. Do you believe the information in your possession could be a game changer in the U.S. election?
I think it's significant. You know, it depends on how it catches fire in the public and in the media.
Sunday. So few hints from Julian Assange, Chris. And as we look back over the last several months, there's been a few different stories about emails, a few different stories about the Clinton Foundation. What do you think is the impact of either the Foundation story of this week or perhaps potential email leaks or document leaks from Julian Assange?
Well, let's first of all deal with Julian Assange. You call him the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. This is a guy, he is speaking from the Ecuadorian embassy because he was to be extradited out of Britain on sexual assault charges and taken to Sweden, and he has sought asylum for 5 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, and the emails that he's trafficking in are stolen documents. They're ones that are hacked by the Russian government. They're ones that are stolen by Americans like Bradley Manning. So the idea that he would play a role in American politics is pretty distressing. This is a bad guy dealing and trafficking in stolen documents. Having said that, obviously, some of the documents turn out to be accurate, as we saw in the case of the Democratic National Committee. Depending on what he's able to reveal, it could be damaging to the Clinton campaign or not. I have to say, though, I find the whole idea that Julian Assange might play a role in American politics highly distasteful. So,
and you rightly point out, there are those that say he's a criminal. By fact, there are those that call him a crusader. So he's totally controversial, but by the books, Chris, it's a good important reminder for us about who this person is. In the meantime, though, he says these documents are coming. And if they do expose something about Hillary Clinton or they are the truth, then how should we all consider them?
Well, you have to consider the facts, even no matter how distasteful the source of the facts are. But remember, we're talking here, as in the case of the DNC, of the Russian government hacking into democratic files and playing a role in our politics. I mean, regardless of whether it's to the benefit of Trump or the benefit of Clinton, that's a pretty dangerous idea that foreign governments that wish us ill would play a role in American politics. But obviously, if, and we have to repeat if, we don't know, one, whether he has any files, or two, if he has files, what they're going to show. If they're accurate, and if they show something, obviously we have to deal with that on that basis. In terms of the, let me just say, in terms of the impact of what we have found out so far about Hillary Clinton, there obviously is a connection between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department. And when the Clinton campaign says, well, you know, the fact is they're cherry picking and there are just a few facts here, the AP had to sue the government to get the files. I mean, if the Clinton campaign or the State Department or the Foundation wanted to make this information available, they could do it, and the Clinton and Associated Press wouldn't have to sue to get the files in the first place.
The Associated Press had a 3-year process to get these files and continues to look over the schedules and calendars, so we'll see what else they bring. What do you make of the Clinton reaction to the Associated Press, how hard they've gone after the Associated Press, and how they feel this may impact their road for the White House?
Well, obviously they're hurt by it, and the fact that Hillary Clinton, who was on this fundraising tour, has not been at rallies, has not been taking questions from reporters at press conferences, or even individual questions by individual interviews. The fact that she felt the need to call in to Anderson Cooper last night to speak to this is an indication that they feel that it is having some impact and damaging her. Look, this scandal in terms of the private emails, in terms of the Clinton Foundation and its nexus to the Clinton State Department, has been going on for more than a year now. There's a legitimate question how much impact it's going to have on the campaign. Obviously, if people are concerned, one would think they'd already be concerned if they were Clinton supporters. Maybe they aren't that concerned about it, but it's not good stuff to have coming out that 50% plus of the private, non-governmental, non-foreign people that she met with had some connection to the foundation. That's not a positive, and seems to indicate there is some connection between giving money to the foundation, not necessarily in getting government action. We haven't found that, but in terms of access, in terms of being able to meet or talk with the Secretary of State, and that's obviously something most people don't have the opportunity to do.
If I was an American citizen, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if you paid me. In fact, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if she paid me. Folks, the message is clear. The parallels are there. There are millions of ordinary Americans who've been let down, who feel so many of their representatives are politically correct parts of that liberal media elite. They feel people aren't standing up for them, and they've actually, in many cases, given up on the whole electoral process.
There you have it. That was Nigel Farage last night. He joins us now from Jackson, Mississippi. Nigel, I am told that the crowd didn't know who you were last night in Mississippi, but by the time you'd finished speaking, they loved you. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know. You know, it may well be that there are lots of people that turned up at that rally last night that perhaps haven't studied Brexit very much. They've heard of it, but they haven't perhaps studied it. But the lessons, the parallels are clear. You know, what we did in the UK on the 23rd of June was to strike the first really big blow against the professional political class working hand in glove with the giant multinationals and the big Wall Street banks. And I think, you know, hopefully I explained that yesterday.
Look, but they're all against you. I mean, the establishment was lined up en masse without breaking any ranks at all. They were all opposed to you. And I'm told that on the morning of the vote to leave was down in the polls, substantially down in the polls, and yet you pulled off a remarkable victory. Is that accurate? You were down in the polls the morning of the vote?
The morning of the vote was quite remarkable. There was an opinion poll issued by what was a reputable polling company showing the Remain side 10 points in the lead. And I genuinely think that what went on at the end of that campaign was a deliberate media and establishment attempt to say to voters, look, Brexit isn't going to win, so why bother to go out to vote for it? And what I was saying to Trump supporters last night is, whatever gets said in the next 73 days in this campaign, you know, even if they tell you that McDonnell can't win, don't believe them, because what we saw was a deliberate attempt to fiddle the figures. Luckily, we ignored it and we beat them.
Now, President Obama went to Britain before the Brexit vote, and he said, you got to stay. I understand that that was very resented by British people who didn't like an American politician telling them how to vote. Well, couldn't you say the same thing about you? You come to America and you've told American voters, don't vote for Hillary Clinton. I mean, you could say there's a parallel there, and that what you said last night could be resented in some quarters in America.
Well, Obama said we should vote Remain. Obama said that terrible things would happen to us if we didn't vote Remain. And he told us that if we voted to leave, that basically America would just drop us and our relationship with the United States of America. I didn't tell anyone how to vote. I wouldn't dare do such a thing. I did suggest, though, that if I was an American citizen, I wouldn't vote for Hillary, because nothing is going to change if that woman wins. She represents that big corporate media club, you know, that have had their own way over the last 20 or 30 years, that have led us into an endless series of wars and led us into a world where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So I personally wouldn't vote for Hillary, but no, I'm not telling people how they should vote.
Would you did not directly endorse Donald Trump last night. Why not?
Because I criticised Obama for telling us how we should vote, and I'm not going to fall into that same trap myself. But I don't think it's very difficult to read between the lines of what I was saying last night.
Now, we were told that if the Brits voted to leave Europe, the Brexit, if it was a successful vote, the whole country would fall to pieces. It would be a catastrophe. The stock market would plunge. The economy would go into recession, depression. Bring us up to speed, please. The vote was June the 23rd. It's now 2 months later. What's happened in those 2 months in Britain?
Well, what has happened is the FTSE 100 index, our main share index, has gone through the roof. It is over 25% higher than it was in February this year. We had the largest house building company, who we were told would virtually go bankrupt if we voted Brexit, reported their figures just this week with record orders on their books. We've even seen Standard & Poor's and Moody's completely revise their growth prospects for Britain over the next 2 or 3 years. And we now see that the British economy, whilst it's not perfect, but is forecast to do better than France and Germany and the rest of the European Union. And frankly, what we were sold was a complete pack of scaremongering lies. It was called Project Fear. And I said to the audience last night, you will hear the same thing. You will hear, if Trump wins, we'll play into the hands of President Putin, we'll bring the world closer to war, and there'll be terrible economic ruin come to America. We were promised all the same things, and I'm pleased to say that none of them have happened. And now what we have, all over the world, our country is saying, well, now you're freed of this ridiculous European club. Can we come and talk to you? Can we be friends again? And I think that really matters. And I very much hope, because, I've always been a huge fan of the USA. I very much hope that we can resume our proper, special relationship as partners and friends now that we're going to be free again.
A lot of people in America love you. Why don't you stay? Get a green card. Stay. You want to?
Well, you did, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been here forever. But I worked for an American company in the 1980s and 90s, so I've travelled, the length and breadth of this country on business, as I like to say, when I had a proper job. I'm now doing a bit of it in politics. All I can say is that over the course of the next few weeks, I will be back.
Good. Nigel Farage, come back and see us again, please. We appreciate you being here.